Folks, welcome back to my review of Yu Yu Hakusho. This is part 2. If you haven't watched part 1, do that first, because this is clearly part 2. The Chapter Black saga is without a doubt my favorite story arc of Yu Yu Hakusho. If the Dark Tournament was about each character's personal growth, Chapter Black is about them taking that growth and applying it as a team against the most horrifying threat in the entire show. Shinobu Sensui is my favorite villain on Yu Yu. The former spirit detective who just had a really bad day at work one day. Sensui's story is the tragedy of a man so stuck in his ways that when he's confronted by something that proves his core values wrong, the only way his mind can cope is by doing a 180. This 180, unfortunately, was a plot to open the portal to Demon World and destroy every human on Earth. Combine this with the fact that the man collects henchmen by finding broken antisocial psychics who hate their own species and poisoning their minds by showing them the Chapter Black tape. Or in one case, grooming a child to his cause who doesn't even really understand the true nature of what he's trying to accomplish. And sacrificing these people the moment they're no longer useful to him. Yeah, backstory or not, Sensui is unrepentantly psychotic. But his story opens up a question that really is the backbone of Chapter Black. Are human beings worth saving? This is the question presented from the villains to the heroes and vice versa. This isn't just a battle of strength, or a battle of wits. This is a battle of morality. And both sides have some good points, even the bad guys. This is a very deep arc. Yu Yu had plenty of thematic depth before this arc, but this one seems to put its theme right in the forefront. Chapter Black also has this enormous sense of urgency. There's a countdown here, and the heroes are fighting against time. You feel this urgency in every moment of this arc. This arc also creates challenges for our heroes in which they can't solely rely on strength. The villains in this arc are humans, and aside from Sensui, they're physically weaker than the heroes. So the concept of territory is introduced, which ends up being an extremely well-conceptualized tool to put the main character's powers in check. The use of territory in this arc creates some awesome battles of wit that we only see in this arc, and keeps the main characters from becoming too overpowered against villains that they'd otherwise cream instantly. The introduction to these concepts occurs in the beginning of this arc when the gang faces off against Kido, Kado, and Yana in what winds up being a test employed by Genkai to prepare them for the mission they're about to face. I actually grew pretty fond of these guys and was sad to see them disappear after this arc ended. Though I did think it was hilarious when at the end of the arc, Kuwabara is like, hey, we should hang out sometime, and they're just like, nah, we're good. The saga progresses as the heroes face off against Sensui's goons. 5 human psychics with incredible territory powers. And each matchup with these goons is really memorable. Yusuke's fight with the Doctor is the first time he runs the risk of killing a human being. In Kuwabara's fight with Seaman, whose real name was obviously mispronounced because the English dub didn't want people calling him Seaman, he unlocks his most powerful attack on the show, the Dimension Sword. And I love that he was the one Sensui was looking for all this time. And the reveal was fucking awesome. Fuck with his friends, he shatters dimensions. Of course, knowing what he finds out about Seaman, Kuwabara, having a heart as big as the whole world, not only spares him, but carries him to safety. This human kindness shatters Seaman's preconceived notions about his own kind. Sniper, great fight, love the flying knives, and the return of Hiei. Of course he was gonna help them. Game Master's territory turned into a surprisingly tragic part of the show, as it turned out that he wasn't in on Sensui's plan at all. Sensui used him to stall them, not even telling him that if he loses he would die. Kurama has to make the toughest decision of his life, killing a child in order to save humanity. This was deep. This really illustrated the difference between who Kurama was before and after becoming Suichi. Kurama is haunted by this. I'd also like to point out that the game rules being understandable in an English dub is a real testament to how well translated this show is. Then there's Gourmet, who is actually Elder Togoro. Already in a dark place, Kurama shows this fucker absolutely no mercy, trapping him in the sinning tree forever. This was a fate worse than death. Then there's the fight with Sensui. Oh man, this fight is nuts. Without a doubt my favorite fight in the series. Also the longest. A lot happens. Yusuke versus Sensui while the others are trapped in the Yureya Toko, I think I'm pronouncing that right, which is basically Itsuki's territory. Here we actually find out why Itsuki follows Sensui. Unlike the others, he wasn't brainwashed. He's just madly in love with the guy. All 7 of him. That's right, this is also the part where it's revealed that Sensui has 7 personalities, though I'm pretty sure we only meet 3 of them. Not all of them were made for combat. I thought this was just a tad dumb at first, but this exists for 3 reasons. 1, so that Sensui doesn't have to face the evil he's committed in order to do what he thinks is the right thing. 2, so that when Shinobu is truly revealed, it's a power level increase that hits us like what, and 3, as an explanation for why Sensui and no one else in the whole show has mastered sacred energy, the energy reservoir that's stronger than all others. And then Koenma once again really shows up for our guy, and this time it's personal. Koenma feels guilty for what Sensui has become, and you can see the toll that it takes on him this entire arc. This was a layer of depth to Koenma that I really loved, and when he's ready to sacrifice himself as penance for the mistake he made, and Yusuke says, "You're not ready to die, you just stopped teething." My man! But not as much as what happens right after. Yusuke has a plan. He's going to do for Kuwabara what Toguro did for him. He's going to die so that the others can dive into their energy reservoirs and destroy Sensui. The moment before he dies, when Kuwabara desperately tries to unlock the dimensional sword but can't at first because his emotions need to reach that climax, and he's having that tear-jerking flashback about how much he respected and loved Yusuke before they even really became friends, and how much he means to him, and then he finally gets the sword to work and cuts through, and it's too late. Yusuke Urameshi is dead. This is the most powerful moment in the entire show. My god, the editing, the music, the everything. And now we see how much Yusuke really meant to these guys, as they launch an all-out attack on Sensui, fully powered up all the way into Demon World, even cutting the strings to keep the high-class demons out, just to take him down. And the moment we first see Demon World, wow, incredible. And these guys are ready to go down fighting. At this point, they each know they can't beat him, but fuck it. And then, wait a second. Who are these guys? They work for Spirit World? What are they, human? What's a Mazaku? What's going on here? And holy shit, did Pooh just evolve like a fucking Pokemon? Fuck it, ask the questions later because Yusuke's back, baby! But first, he trolls the Defense Force in classic Yusuke style. He goes in there for fight number 3, and the part where Hiei says, "I got your back," made me shout "fuck yeah" at my TV, and then the final fight. And then Yusuke really becomes the Mazaku, and Sensui seems satisfied. Satisfied to die this way. And then, finally dies spectacularly. And though I do love the way Sensui went out, knowing that if he had to be defeated it was by a demon, the way Yusuke defeats him, not quite in control of his own body, is something I don't know how I feel about. It works as a segue into the final arc of the show for sure, but, well, you probably know what I have to say about that, so let's save it. And although people say the demon Yusuke angle was anticlimactic or Deus Ex Machina, I hear ya, but it worked for me. It worked because of the closure it provided for Sensui's story. Sensui was killed by that which he had killed all his life. His life came full circle. And Sensui himself says, "It was you who killed me," and that consciousness exists on many levels. So, fuck it. It kinda works for me. I'm judging Chapter Black on its own merits, not on how much of it bled into Three Kings. This is a decent ending for an arc. And then we get a final episode where we actually see what happened to all of the characters who only appear in this arc, including Itsuki, who just cuddles with Sensui's dead body for all eternity? That was a little weird. Also, that thing happens again where characters who were supposed to remain dead come back to life, and this time it's explained even less. But this aside, Chapter Black is, to me, the crown jewel of Yu Yu Hakusho story arcs. With the highest stakes, the most insurmountable odds, twists and turns, shocking revelations, one of the greatest, most evil, and most compelling villains in TV, and the deepest question this show dares to ask. The final challenge that the 4 main characters would face together is without a doubt my favorite one the show has to offer. When I think about Yu Yu Hakusho, the first thing I think about is Chapter Black. So how on earth could you ever make a follow-up that could top this? Well, they didn't. I need to start off by saying that Three Kings is not bad. There are certainly parts of this saga that I love. The problem that most people have with this story arc, and I agree with this, is that it is noticeably inferior to the 3 arcs that come before it. This has a lot to do with the fact that Yoshihiro Togashi was losing his fucking mind at this point. Writing the manga was consuming his life, and he wanted out. Three Kings is a testament to this, because despite this story arc being disappointing, it still gives the show a surprisingly good ending, and didn't leave a completely sour taste in my mouth. You see, when Togashi got tired from writing manga, he retired. He didn't just keep going even though he'd forgotten half of what he'd already written. So what good things can I say about Three Kings? Well, Hiei and Kurama's backstories are told beautifully, especially Hiei's. We hadn't seen Yukina for a while, so it was nice to bring that back into the forefront and actually explore this broken person's history. I love the reveal that Yukina left Demon World of her own accord because she never forgave her people for what they did to Hiei. I likewise enjoyed the fact that Kurama had unfinished business before he became Suichi, and that changing from Demon World's coldest bastard into a normal human, capable of love and morality, doesn't change Yomi's disdain for him at first. And most importantly, it's the final leg of Yusuke's journey, and there are some highlights. He meets the first spirit detective, which was cool, but also fucking weird, because why is the first spirit detective still alive? How is this a recent job profession? Shouldn't this have existed since at least the beginning of civilization? I also ended up really liking Raisin and his backstory. Of the three kings, Raisin was easily my favorite. I enjoyed the parallels between the woman Raisin loved and Yusuke returning to Keiko. Yusuke actually learns something from his demon father other than greater power. I love the idea that a demon starving himself to death would take centuries because they live longer. But how are these demons finding the humans they were eating? If the barrier has existed for a while, shouldn't they all be starving to death? Oh geez, the cracks are beginning to show, huh? I think the decision Yusuke makes to decide the fate of Demon World in a tournament was a huge detriment to this arc. I'd make the argument that the first half of Three Kings before the tournament is far better than the tournament part, and if they had gone for Yusuke needing to fight his friends and maybe they remember, hey, you're our friend, and take his side and team up on Yomi and Makuro, that would have been a lot better than what we got. Additionally, Yomi and Makuro are not good antagonists. Makuro is a great character, and I actually like the way she was set up as Hiei's love interest, but she stops being a villain after that. And Yomi only threatens Kurama's family in the beginning, not really doing much else after. This tournament feels like there are no stakes. For starters, no one gets killed or is even really trying to kill, and considering the last tournament this series gave us was a gory, visceral death tournament, with huge amounts of character and story development in each fight, this one pales in comparison. Because of this, most of the fights are glossed over, including the final fight of the entire series. I'm fine with Yusuke losing this fight. I didn't want him to become Demon King anyway, but this series has never done this in a fight. What the fuck? Not to mention, the fight between Yomi and his son was the only fight in the entire series that I just did not give a fuck about. We just met this kid. We have no stake in this fight. Now, if this was a fight to the death and he killed his own son to drive the story forward and make us go, holy shit, that would have been cool, but that's not what happened. It's kind of funny the part where Yusuke says, I don't know what I'm fighting for anymore, because that's the way I was feeling at this point. The show didn't know what its point was in this saga. But all of this pales in comparison to the gravest sin that this arc commits. They cut Kuwabara out of the action. I hated this. I don't know why they did this. It's a bunch of demons and he's only human? So what? That was only him the entire fucking show. Kuwabara loves fighting and now he's studying? I thought he'd make a surprise last-minute appearance, but he never did. They put Kuwabara in the corner. And no one but no one puts Kuwabara in the corner. These four guys are the backbone of the show. These four guys, not three. And Kuwabara being a huge contender for my favorite character, this did not sit right with me. Disappointing? Yes. Anticlimactic? Yes. Three Kings is without a doubt, and very sadly, the worst story arc by far in Yu Yu. But a lot of that stems from how much closer to being flawless most of the show was that came before it. And though it's the worst story arc, it's still not outright bad. It's the shortest arc, and the disappointments only come when the tournament starts. Everything leading up to that is really well executed. So given that that part doesn't last long, this arc certainly doesn't ruin what came before or directly after. And what comes after is the end of the show. And Yu Yu Hakusho has a really great final episode. Honestly, kind of a perfect final episode. Everyone's in a different school now. There's peace in Demon and Human World, with the one no longer invading the other. The gang reunites except for Hiei, which makes sense. His ending, working for Demon World, totally works. Genkai announces that she's willing her property over to the gang upon her death. Then of course Yusuke returns. Having found all the answers he was looking for, he's finally ready to commit to something all the way. He finally embodies everything he was taught. And even though he did become a demon, this moment reinforces Genkai's words to him. He never turned his back on his humanity. He didn't run from life. He ran towards it. No matter how disappointing Three Kings might have been, this was a great final episode. Though I guess I would have liked to see Hiei finally tell Yukina that he's her brother. I do like that final scene between him and Kurama, but the fact that this was brought up a second time in Three Kings really made me think he was going to tell her. Hell, it would have been nice for Yukina to also finally I don't know, directly acknowledge that Kuwabara is madly in love with her. He's been very open about it, but she never seems to directly address it. Oh, that Kazuma sure is silly. Girl, my boy is pouring his fucking heart out to you. Oh, and I love that the show was a documentary this whole time. In a lot of anime from this era, the previews of the next episodes at the end are narrated by one of the characters. Wait, how do these characters know that they're on a show? Like, what? But this time they actually made this dumbass trope make sense within the show. Maybe I'm making a huge deal out of this, but I fucking loved this. This makes everything make sense. They filmed everything and turned it into Yu Yu Hakusho. Then got the guys to do these previews like a DVD commentary. And Ogre was the narrator. Hell yeah. Alright, so now that the season by season is finished, here's some random thoughts that didn't fit exactly into any specific season of the show. I'd like to point out that Yu Yu Hakusho is a really quotable show. There are so many good lines, and not just the heavy stuff either. There's one-liners and silly stuff in there that I love too. And I mean like way too many to name them all. But here's some quick favorites. The show's one glaring negative is that it backpedals on characters dying without explanation. The biggest sin here is of course Genkai's resurrection, a moment that I think really detracted from the impact of her death. But they also do this with Sensui's accomplices, which makes even less sense. Like, did they all die unexpectedly like Yusuke did and had to put their souls back in their bodies? Speaking of which, Yusuke's whole-ass adventure begins when he selflessly saves that kid, right? Then Botan tells Yusuke that there isn't a place for him in Spirit World yet because no one expected him to sacrifice himself for someone else. And there's no way this is the first time this has happened, or even happened recently. There's enough people on the planet that someone doing an unexpected thing that puts them in mortal danger is happening at any given moment. So this ghost thing is happening with some regularity, which means the afterlife only sees what's happening on the outside and not what's actually going on inside a person. That's terrifying. Like, the people in charge of the afterlife already filed this kid under bad egg and probably going to hell, and are so confused by an act of selflessness that this happens. He's 14! He's not even an adult yet. Cut him some slack. It also would have been interesting to see the kid he saves make a reappearance later on. This kid is a pivotal character in the show, but he only shows up in the first couple episodes. When something like this happens in the beginning of a show, I'm always hoping it'll come back full circle. Like, maybe this kid could have been the next spirit detective or something. It's a low-risk job now that Demon World is chill. I kinda wish we'd been given a little more information on the world of this show. Spirit World, Demon World, Human World. There is a distinct separation between humans and demons, physically, culturally, and biologically, that I would have liked to learn more of. There are good demons on the show, there are bad ones, there is an actual tier list that divides demons into a caste system of intelligence and strength. Why? Why does demon culture value life less than human culture? And it's made very clear that they do. Demons kill each other left and right, and it's accepted within each demon civilization. Why were they made differently at all? Why does Spirit World favor humans over demons? Sure, our lifespans are way shorter, but they gave the humans planet Earth and gave the demons this nightmare hellscape, to the point where demons are always trying to escape it. And it's against the code of Spirit World for a demon or a human to take the life of a human, but not a demon. They don't give a shit when demons kill each other. Humans are clearly shown some form of preferential treatment. Why is it frowned upon for humans to become aware of Spirit World, but not demons? Most humans don't know demons exist, but nearly all demons seem to know about humans. Why do some demons resemble humans biologically? Some can even have sex with them and reproduce with them. Some eat them. What about Spirit World? What are these guys? Are they angels? How does that world work? There's gotta be angels if there's sacred energy, right? I really would have liked to get an explanation for some of this stuff. I like the way power levels work in this show. No one is overpowered. Signature moves drain energy from the fighters that they have to recoup. A truly powerful, formidable attack might hit a wall when stacked up to an opponent who has that one defensive maneuver that can counter it. Just when you think the gang has reached the heights of power, bam, they hit you with the territory concept, a roadblock to fighting power. Not to mention the attacks themselves in the show are truly interesting to watch. A character's signature move doesn't resemble any other character's signature move. They're given their own design and identity. I also like how the attacks are announced in English and Japanese subtitles. It gives a weird vintage kung fu vibe to the show. So boy am I glad I rewatched this show and finally finished it. Because Yu Yu Hakusho easily stood the test of time. I was just as engaged by it as an adult as I was when I first watched it as a kid. And for a guy who doesn't really watch anime that much, watching one this long that was this good was really refreshing. The characters, the writing, the motivations, the fights, the music, the animation, all evoke that feeling in you. That feeling like you're on the edge of your seat, can't wait to see what happens next. Can't wait for the bad guy to fall or for the hero to make a breakthrough. And isn't that the feeling that a fighting anime is supposed to give us? As kids or as adults? If that's the case, if that's what makes this type of cartoon good, then Yu Yu Hakusho is certainly good anime. But for this plebe who doesn't have a peer to compare it to, it is definitely, he's gonna say it, without a doubt, he's gonna say it, good TV. Ah, hell yeah! Hey, can I have that wine bottle if you're not gonna use it? Guys, thank you so much for watching. How do you feel about Yu Yu Hakusho? How do you feel about how I feel about Yu Yu Hakusho? If you enjoyed this review, like, subscribe, and consider donating $1 to my Patreon. I also have an unrelated, super fucked up comedy podcast you can listen to called The Haha Men. Links in the descriptions.